Welcome back, YouTube, to another FPL Family video. Lee and Sam here, fresh for another season, Sam. We've already had the fixtures, and if you haven't checked out our fixture video yet, go back in the channel, have a look at that one. But today, we got 9 teams releasing their FPL prices. Interesting that the Premier League teams themselves did it rather than the official FPL guys. I kind of like that. That was good.
I loved it.
Nice dynamic.
I thought it was so rogue. It was when this randomly Arsenal, like 10 o'clock this morning, went,
Yeah.
Here you go, here's some FPL prices.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa!
Absolutely.
Father's Day presents for all the dads out there. Happy Father's Day to all the dads.
There we go. Happy Father's
Very
Day,
exciting.
FPL dads. And we got 9 of the teams today. Who knows when we're going to get the next 9? I guess soon. I guess.
11.
The next 11. Sorry,
Yeah.
more than 18 teams in the Premier League, of course. But we're due to get, I guess, the rest of them sometime over the next few days or week.
So.
I guess. They're not going to give us 9 and leave out the others, I
We
guess.
normally have it over a few days, don't we? So getting 9 in one day, I'm kind of a bit like,
Yeah, you
what's
think
going to
so?
happen?
And fingers crossed, that means the game can't be too far away, Sam. They must be releasing the game pretty soon.
Is it nearly Tinker time, do you reckon?
It's going to be nearly Tinker time. And what we're going to start with, Sam, we're going to start with the team that kicked it off. As you rightly said, a shock to us all when Arsenal Twitter, rather than official FPL, released these prices. But what are you saying about these Arsenal prices? Because I must say, as a start for 10, I was a bit underwhelmed.
Well, Aubameyang back as a forward this year is really
Yeah.
fascinating to me. I thought,
10 mil for Aubameyang. You're not buying that, are you?
no.
I don't think so.
I mean, I went
I
back.
don't think so.
I went back in the aftermath of all this happening and looked at the prices from right at the end of last season, because generally speaking, players are at their peak, aren't they, by the end of the season in terms of their price point anyway.
Yeah.
So I had a little look, and Aubameyang finished the season at 11.3, and he'd had a number of price drops actually, so he'd done the reverse of what I just said.
Yeah.
He's gradually got less as the season went on. So he's taken a huge price hack this year.
Yes,
to
but
bring him
he's
in at
also a
10.
forward, so that kind of
Well-
balances that out. So on the basis of what we saw at the end of last season, would you go for a Aubameyang or would
No.
you go for somebody else? I mean, Pepe at
Pepe
7.5?
Yeah.
Don't you start with me. Pepe doesn't feel anything.
Pepe feels alright at that price point.
No, don't. Let's...
Feels alright.
There was a lot on Twitter about, Aubameyang, don't fancy Aubameyang at 10, but Pepe at 7.5. I reckon these prices that got released got to come to people's heads. I think that there was the FPL being back excitement got to people's heads. No way! Are you going in on Pepe at 7.5?
I'll think about it.
No, you're not. Don't give me that.
I must admit, I'm really interested in Smith Rowe. I think that's quite a nice price point. I'd be intrigued to know what
Sure.
Saka is, because
Yes,
I
okay.
think, having seen some of the other team prices that came out later on in the day, we're going to need some budgets. We're going to need budget players.
Always, yeah.
But even particularly this season, I did a bit of maths in my head and was thinking, I spent half my budget on like 4 players here.
And go on then, Gabriel at 5. I don't think I'm getting too excited about that, but that for me suggests that I'm going to be able to get into the Arsenal defence with perhaps Tierney at 5.5. I'm kind of guessing his price a little bit there.
Suspect
But
he'll be a bit more than Gabriel.
do you think Tierney will be 5.5, 6? And if he's 5.5, are you tempted?
Well, looking at the other defenders that are in that 5-5 bracket, we're talking about Creswell, who we'll see later when we talk about West Ham.
Yes.
So I suspect that, I would be putting Tierney in and around that same price point. I can't see that he's worth additional to Creswell. He certainly wouldn't be in my FPL team, that's for sure.
All right, well, let's move to the other side of North London then. Your boys Spurs, Lloris, Son, Kane and Højbjerg. And again, I hate to sound like a pessimistic guy, but I wasn't really feeling this either. Although Twitter did say, a lot of Twitter, FPL Twitter, was saying that actually 12.5 for a City forward ain't
shut
too
up.
bad. Harry Kane at 12.5, what are we saying?
Well, I've just spent 22.5
Oh,
million.
so he's locked in your team then?
100%.
That's him done.
You cannot.
Oh,
I mean,
dear
in
me.
my
Oh,
opinion,
dear me.
in my opinion, regardless of what shirt Harry Kane wears next season, and by the way, it's not looking like it's going to be an England one for very long, is it? The way we
true.
keep playing.
That's true.
I think that regardless, he's worth 12.5 all day long. Golden Boot, most assists in the league last season. He's an absolute no-brainer for me. I was actually expecting him to be 13, so when I saw 12.5, I thought, hello. Cheeky 0.5 save there.
But can we as FPL managers lock into the Kane and Son dynamic duo dream? Yeah, the dynamic duo like we did many weeks last season.
We're
and
gonna
those
find
two
out, aren't
started
we?
the season like a house on fire last year. So can you afford to spend 22.5 million of your budget, almost a quarter of your budget on those Spurs boys with City first game? Not happening, is it?
Unlikely, I'd say,
Yeah.
that you're going to have both. I mean, Son's a really fascinating one for me. So Kane ended the season at 11.9, so seeing him at 12.5 feels quite frankly reasonable. But Son, on the other hand, never got anywhere near 10 last season.
Big price hike.
Yeah, 9.6
Yeah,
was the highest he got. So we're talking about a big jump for him. I think actually over the course of the season, what did he start at? Was he 9.5?
Maybe.
Or was
yeah,
he
maybe
9?
9. Can't remember.
I think he was 9 actually, and Bale was 9.5. I think Bale went in slightly more than Son. But regardless, I think Son's expensive. But having said that, if Kane does leave, he's the talisman then. So maybe he's going to be worth 10 million. Let's find out. The other two I'm less interested in. Højbjerg is a non-asset.
Not really sure why they put Højbjerg in there.
Just because he's an absolute legend.
Missed the penalty the other day for Denmark. Ain't that good?
Look, I'm telling you, all the Danish boys are heroes in my view. Højbjerg especially.
Well, okay.
But I don't think he's, from an FPL perspective. And Lloris, again, interesting one in there for me because I actually thought he was going to leave this summer. So to see him on the pricing structure from Spurs maybe suggests he's not going to. But he's too expensive. There's some other keepers out there that have been priced really, really nicely.
Well, speaking of which, Sam, a lock in my team. And I was absolutely shocked when I saw this, by the way. And I think, given their fixtures, I'm just going to read you the Brighton fixtures for the first few weeks. It's Burnley away, Watford at home, Everton at home, Brentford away, before then a tricky-looking game against Leicester at the Amex. But there's 5 fixtures, and actually he's even a couple after that. If you look on the Fantasy Football Scout ticker, if you're a member, right? You can have a look at the FDR on the front page of the Fantasy Football Scout website. Links in the description below. The Brighton fixtures look pretty good. So Sanchez at 4.5, he's my keeper. Look no further.
Well, I think...
Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, I think it is. I think...
Isn't it?
I do. I mean, I'm looking at this thinking... Wow, this is a gift from the FPL gods because it's nailed on starter at Brighton. He was fantastic for a lot of last season. I am kind of intrigued now because I can see myself going with just him and a 4.0. And that will allow me to have much better budget across the rest of my team for all these essential big names that we're going to talk about, I'm sure, over the course of the season. So to be able to do that feels great. But if you want to get rotating keepers... The 4.5 bracket, suddenly if Sanchez is there, I'm thinking, well, there's some other teams that we haven't had announcements from yet with decent keepers. If they're going to go in at the same price as Sanchez, FPL football teams are going to be filled with really, really good goalkeepers that you can rotate amongst the fixtures.
Yeah, and we'll come back to rotating goalkeepers in just a second because I think I found a reasonable rotating goalkeeper for Robert Sanchez over the first 10 to 12 weeks. Ooh. So get on Twitter at FPL Family to find and look back at some of my tweets because I think Brighton and Leeds United rotate pretty nicely for the first 10 weeks. But let me know in the comments below whether you agree. Take a look at those fixtures and see what you think. We'll talk about Leeds in a second. But elsewhere from Brighton, Gross in at 6, Trossard 6.5. Bissouma's a bit of a filler. You had him as a filler last season. Is 4.5 okay?
Yeah, I'd go with him again this season.
Okay.
As a 5th midfielder... Bissouma for me was a really nice option at the beginning of last season. And you asked me at the beginning of this, how are you going to afford all these players? Well, last year, if you remember, I did exactly this and I afforded it with players like Bissouma. Yeah. And actually, when you're talking about a player that you don't need to come off the bench very often, but that is guaranteed to start and get game time, Bissouma's ideal for that. He's an ideal pick. He's never gonna set the world on fire, although he did score that worldy goal.
I remember that worldie. That was a beauty.
Never going to set the world on fire, but it's enough to just tick over 1 or 2 points on your bench every week, which sometimes is all you need.
Yeah, if you can just get some minutes out of these guys, it's not a bad thing.
Getting it with him.
Difficult for us to sit here and say we're buzzing about Bissouma at 4.5, but he's an enabler. That's key.
As an enabler, I am buzzing about him because guaranteed.
And if you're new to FPL, which a lot of you guys listening and watching will be, you're going to need these players. It's 100%. No good saying I want Aubameyang, Kane, Salah, Mane and Sterling.
You don't want Aubameyang.
You don't want Aubameyang potentially at 10 million anyway. But the rules of FPL dictate that you cannot have all of those premiums. You've got to make sacrifices. You've got to find those enablers. And actually, Bissouma at 4.5, maybe one to have a look at. Maybe one to have a look at. Let's look at Leeds then. So I mentioned before, the rotation between Leeds and Brighton doesn't look too bad for quite a sustained period at the beginning of the season. So Meslier coming in at 5.0 was a bit of a disappointment for me.
What were you hoping for 4.5?
Well, I was hoping for 4.5 because then he got a rotation with Sanchez. But at 5... I can see why FPL have done it because of the amount of saves that he made. And actually, on their day, particularly towards the end of the season, Leeds did tighten up at the back. So I saw the 5.0. I wasn't surprised. A bit disappointed on that from Meslier. But elsewhere, I want to talk about Rafinha and Bamford because out of those two, it's only one of those I'm picking, and it's not the Englishman. What are you saying about those prices?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because, like I say, I spent a little bit of time before we came on to record this video looking at prices at the end of last season. And Bamford is one of the biggest price jumps
hike.
I've seen.
Yeah.
So ended the season...
But not a surprise.
No, not a surprise. But ended
yeah.
2021 at 6.6 million. Now 8 million. Now suddenly
Big.
I'm like, ow, that's massive. Does it put me off? A little bit. I've got to be honest. It does put me off a little bit.
Yeah.
But Rafinha, on the other hand, again, another price hike, but that 6.5 bracket feels like it might be still okay. Finished the season, actually the reverse, at 5.6. Now up to 6.5.
But at 5.6 at the back end of last season, felt like that was ridiculous.
It was a cheat code, right?
It was a ridiculous price for a player of his creative ability, easily the most creative player in that Leeds side. So I was looking at today's prices thinking, well, 5.6 was, like you say, cheat code time. So if he gets to sort of 7, maybe even 7.5, I would still consider him. At 6.5, I'm going to find it very hard to leave him out. Let me just read you the Leeds fixtures because they're not easy. It's United away first, then it's Everton at home, Burnley away, Liverpool at home, and then Newcastle away. So it's a tricky looking start for Bielsa's boys. Does that put you off of Rafinha, or is that price too good to turn down?
It doesn't put me off because this Leeds team fundamentally are going to be the same one that we saw last season. And we all know what they can do going forward. Rafinha is the key to that attacking fluidity and the momentum that they get. And they love an away game. So the fact that they've got multiple away games in those opening games doesn't really put me off. And I think when you're talking about a 6.5 million, at Bamford's price at 8, does put me off a little bit with those fixtures, and I think you can afford to kind of wait a little bit. But with Rafinha at 6.5, I don't see anything wrong with investing there. The other interesting one for me is that Leeds, of course, very kindly, thank you Leeds United, released the whole of their price.
Was a few. That's a fair point. Yeah, a few of the teams actually put their whole price list out,
Leeds,
right?
Liverpool,
yeah. Norwich did as well.
Norwich did as well. Went out there and said, "Here you are. Here's our whole squad."
Yeah.
So we also know that Dallas has indeed moved from defence into midfield for this season. Finished the season at 5.5 million, so FPL have just left him there at 5.5.
But put him in midfield, does that put you off of him a bit? Or does he still represent reasonable value at 5.5?
My personal opinion is, at 5.5, he still represents good value. Because although you won't get the defensive, as many defensive points, you still potentially get one if they keep the clean sheet. You don't get as many. But equally, we didn't own Dallas last season for the clean sheets. We owned him for the attacking potential he has. We're not seeing Dallas actually play in any different a position this season, I wouldn't have thought. We just got him in a different position in the game. So I think he still offers good value at 5.5 million.
All right, with that fixture list, I'm not tempted on the double up though. And if I had to choose between Rafinha and Dallas, I think I'd go for the Brazilian.
Unless I need the extra million.
Unless you need that extra million, which of course you
will.
Because you're bound to. Let's talk about extra millions. A player that you're going to want in your team, I think, is Mr. Mo Salah, 12.5 million. Not a surprise, I don't think, when we saw that price for a player that's been on the verge of Golden Boot or Golden Boot winner for the last few years.
Yeah.
Top FPL points scorer over the last few years. Premium asset extraordinaire, Mo Salah, 12.5, say no more. But talk to me about these other Liverpool prices, because Jota, for 5 million less, I think still represents reasonable value at 7.5, does it not?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting with this Liverpool lineup because Trent we've got at the same price, Robertson we've got at the same price as we saw them start last season.
Hold for those two, which I think is fair.
Starting at the same price again. So we've got holds on those big hitters, which I think is fair. I am a little bit surprised that Trent and Robbo didn't come down a little bit this year. I sort of expected 6.5 and 7 just because they didn't have the same level of season last year. But let's not forget, we've got Van Dijk back for this season. So things should improve for the Liverpool boys. And I do think you're probably going to want one of them. I might be tempted to go with Robertson over Trent, though, because I didn't see there much difference in them last season. And obviously,
we did towards the end of the season, though, didn't we? We did see Trent banging in a few goals, last-minute winners and stuff.
I know he's going to be back for the season, but you never know how long it takes him to come back. The interesting one, again, Liverpool releasing their whole squad. Mane in at 12. No, thank you.
Well, you have to say no at the minute. I mean, with Salah at 12.5, you've got to go for him over Mane,
Dallas over Rafinha, so I can have Salah over Mane.
Well, quite right. Yeah, quite right. So Mane, a bit of a no-go at 12. I was actually surprised to see him right up there. I thought he might have been down at the 11 point something.
Yeah.
But let's see. Anyway, Liverpool, not a lot of change. Not a lot of change. But if you want to go in for Jota at 7.5, wouldn't want to put you off. Quite like that. Jota and Salah, well, given the fixtures, let's remind ourselves, Norwich, Burnley, Chelsea, Leeds, Palace as the first 5 for Liverpool. Looks pretty good. I'd want to see them in pre-season. I'd want to make sure that they've got the Hendersons and the Van Dijks back fit and playing a few pre-season games, finding their feet to see whether Liverpool can hit the ground running. But Klopp's got to be looking at those fixtures and going, right, we need to score some goals early on and get off the mark sharpish here with teams that, let's face it, we struggled against some of those teams. Crystal Palace and Burnley at home in particular, we struggled. So maybe with those two. I don't know. Let's wait and see what the whole game looks like, because there's other midfielders I'm sure I'm going to want, based on what I've seen in the Euros more than anything. Kai Havertz, hello, we're looking forward to that one. Let's go to Crystal Palace. Zaha, Gaeta, Mitchell and Benteke released. Zaha coming in at 6.5, a whole 0.5 more than Rafinha. So in that price bracket for your third/fourth midfielder, I don't think I'm going to go Zaha over Rafinha.
No, thank you.
Anybody
maybe
else
while the transfer window's open.
Well, maybe.
But I think what was really interesting for me is the Mitchell thing, because Mitchell's come in really nice and cheap again. We did see consistency in his starts over the course of last season. So at 4.5, he could still offer exceptional value at the back there. I'm also, and I said this to you earlier when the Crystal Palace one came out, I want to know about Nathan Ferguson, because we spent
beginning of last
season, we all spoke about him a lot, and he was injured, and we were talking about how, when he's fit, he'll be a really good FPL asset. And he just never got fit the whole season.
No.
He should be fit for the next season, but of course we've got the new manager stuff going on at Palace, so interesting to watch there, and I think there might be some value in those defenders.
Okay, all right. I'm interested to see how Eze comes in on his pricing. Were they one of the teams that released their whole list, Palace?
No,
I don't think
I haven't
they did.
seen a whole Palace list
maybe
yet.
Keep an eye on those guys, but nothing there to really tempt me. Ditto Burnley, actually. I didn't think... I look at those prices there for Pope, Wood, Tarkovsky, me, and think, I really want to get in on any of those. Chris Wood with a bit of a price rise to 7. What we saying about him?
Yeah, finished the season at 6.6 last year. I don't know. As you say, they're not hugely inspiring. I think the thing I have with Chris Wood is that he did have an exceptionally good end to last season, but he's often just a one goal here, one goal there type of striker, and I think there will potentially be better value in... We haven't seen it yet, but I'm intrigued to see the newly promoted sides and how much... Well, we can talk about one in a minute, but how much their strikers are, because we might get some more value in those guys over him. And Nick Pope, I think we've already seen some such good value in the goalkeeper position that I wouldn't want to spend that much on Nick Pope.
Pope's not worth $1 million over Sanchez, is he?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. All right, well, let's go to the other claret and booze then. West Ham with Antonio, Souček, Creswell and Kufa. Now, the one that caught my eye here was Creswell. Creswell 5.5 last season. Assist after assist after assist on set pieces, corners, etc. I think a record point score for him in FPL last season. So for him to stick at 5.5 is kind of interesting. What do you think?
Really pleased he did.
Yeah.
Really pleased. I really enjoyed owning Creswell last season. He was one of my...
I really did not enjoy not having him.
It
was a thorn in my side, I'll tell you.
He was one of the reasons I beat you last season, because he just kept ticking over the points really nicely. So yeah, I'm definitely interested. I think the West Ham, if they can continue with what they did last season going into this season, then we're looking at a really promising side. What's going to be interesting is, can they cope with European football and Premier League football at the same time, or are they going to do a Wolves? So that's what I'm really interested to see, is can they fight on two fronts in a way that we'll need them to, because there's some really nice pricing going on there in the West Ham assets, to the point where I'd want to own more than one, but European stuff slightly concerned.
Yeah, can Antonio's hamstrings for 7.5 million deal with 2 games a week?
Indeed.
I'm going to suggest not, because they struggled to do 1 game a week last season, quite frankly. Let's finish up with Norwich. So Norwich were one of the teams to post their whole squad, all of their FPL prices. As we saw in the previous video, guys, again, check out our fixtures video if you haven't already, back on the channel. Really right at the bottom, Norwich, in terms of their fixtures. Liverpool, City, Leicester, Arsenal in their first 4. So very difficult. So for me, not going to be turning on the disco ball at the Pookie party on game week 1, no doubt, because I want to see how these boys get on. But was there anything either from the graphic here or from the extended list of FPL Norwich prices that caught your eye?
Yeah, I mean, Pookie and Cantwell were the ones I was really focused on.
What was Cantwell?
I'm interested to see how how they get on without Buendia. That's the other thing. So I think we have got
Sure,
time to wait
yes.
on these guys.
Yeah.
But equally, their pricing is quite nice. They're not overly expensive.
Cantwell 5.5, wasn't he on the long
Yeah,
list?
so I think we can, and I think there is justification if you're talking about going for some cheaper options in order to have the bigger hitters elsewhere. I think there's justification for owning these guys and benching them over the first couple of weeks. I'm pretty sure that's what I did with Cantwell at the beginning of the 1920 season.
Yes.
So I can see myself doing that again over these first few game weeks where they're really challenging and just having him sat there. But I think there's some value in that Norwich side that we could definitely take advantage of.
Yeah, a bit deja vu, I think, for me from the previous time they're in the Premier League. I remember sitting here thinking, I'm going to wait and see. They got Norwich Liverpool on the first day, if I remember, a couple of seasons ago. And then Pukki exploded onto the scene and we all had him a few game weeks in. So maybe we get a repeat from that season. Who knows? So guys, let us know in the comments below what you think of the opening prices. We got the first 9 teams announced on Twitter by the Premier League teams, not by official FPL, by the actual Premier League teams, tweeting at least their top 4 players, if not their whole list. So look out.
All eyes on the other 11
for
clubs,
the remaining 11 clubs. So who have we not had? We've not had Chelsea.
Watford.
We've not had Manchester United.
Man
We've not
City.
had Watford. Man City.
Southampton.
Big teams still to go, still to reveal their FPL prices. So not only do I want to hear your reaction to the prices we've had, but let us know your predictions for the prices we're yet to have. And of course, we'll be back with another video when we see it. It might be tomorrow. Who knows?
Who knows?
If it's tomorrow, we'll be back tomorrow with another video doing those next 11 teams. So watch Twitter. Keep an eye on those Premier League clubs announcing their FPL prices because it's coming soon. They're not going to do these 9 and then wait a week.
Oh, I'd laugh if they did.
It's going to come soon.
If they do 9 and then say nothing
it's
for
gonna
a
come.
week.
It's going to come soon. I suspect part 2 of this video is
I'd like
coming
it if they
pretty
did nothing
soon.
for a week. We'd all go mental. It's just all the FPL managers on Twitter going, where's the other 9? Where's the other 9? And FPL are going, ha ha, you've got to wait a week.
And then just drop the game and run away. Thanks, FPL. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave us a like before you go. And if you're new to FPL Family, hit that subscribe button. We're going to be doing more videos, more live streams all throughout the season. Every Sunday night after the matches, we do a live gut feel reaction to what's going on and what's happened that weekend in FPL. We share our teams, we share our scores, we share our very early thoughts on what we're thinking for the next game week as well. So if you want to be alerted for when we go live or when we drop a new video onto the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the little notify bell as well so that you know whenever a new video is dropped. Until the next 11 teams come live, we'll see you very, very soon. Cheers, guys.
Bye, guys.